So thank you all for joining us. I'm Walter Harrison. I am a proud member of Trinity's class of 1968 and President Emeritus of the University of Hartford, where I served as president for 19 years. I am also a vice chair of Trinity College's Board of Trustees. And just for the moment, I am interim president and CEO of the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Hartford. Before we get to tonight's topic, I'd like to ask one of our participants who's no stranger to any of you, Joanne Berger-Sweeney, to tell us a little bit about Joanne Epps, who was originally scheduled to join our panel of distinguished presidents who are Trinity College alums. Joanne?
Right. So I will just take a moment or two to honor Joanne Epps, class of 1973, honorary degree recipient from 2015. She was scheduled to participate on this panel. When we sent out invitations, she was the first to respond and say, yes, I will participate. Joanne was acting president at Temple University after having been provost there and dean of the law school. After being a proud Trinity alum and graduating, she then went on to Yale Law School. She had a remarkable legacy of leadership, impact, and making a difference. And just the summer before she passed away unexpectedly, she called me up and she said, I'm going to be the acting president of Temple University. And, you know, you're a seasoned president now. I think I'd been president for 9 years. And she said, well, what advice do you have to give me? And I said, well, I'll give you advice as long as you give me some advice, because she'd been in administration for, you know, at least 15 years when she asked me the question. And I think I wanted to share that because it shows that even with her enormous experience, there was a humility and a willingness and desire to learn from others. And I think that's what we hope will happen with our Trinity College liberal arts education, that someone will always want to learn, listen, and hear what others have to say. So in honor of Joanne Epps, we would like to dedicate this panel of Trinity College presidents, Trinity College alums who are presidents.
Right, only one president of Trinity College at a time.
Only one president of Trinity. So thank you. Thank you, Walt.
Thank you, Joanne. And we all mourn Joanne Epps's passing. So as you all know, today we will be discussing Committed to the Future, Ensuring Access to Higher Education. In a moment, I'm going to introduce my colleagues on this panel. I did want to tell all of you who are on the webinar that you may ask questions. I have several questions to ask them, but after that, if time permitting, we will allow questions from the group. So if you have questions for us, you can enter them in the Q&As section of Zoom, or you could go to chat. You can also send us messages like telling Mike Allen that you were in a class with him, or remembering living in a dorm with Jane. Whatever you'd like, we'd love to hear from you. And as time permits, we'll get to your questions. Today I'm joined by 3 college and university presidents who are all Trinity alumni and who are all groundbreaking presidents, a perfect trio of people to discuss our topic today. Mike Allen, class of 1992, is president of Barry University in Florida, where he has served since 2019. He is the first male and the first lay person to serve as president of the institution. Founded by the Adrian Dominican Sisters, Barry has a long-standing commitment to engagement and service to the South Florida community, which Mike has made a priority. He has also guided the university to consistent enrollment growth during his tenure. Prior to coming to Barry, Mike was vice president for student affairs at Catholic University. After Trinity, Mike earned his master's and doctorate in education at the University of Connecticut. When Jane Fernandes, class of 1978, became president of Antioch College in Ohio in 2021, she became the first deaf president in Antioch's 170-year history. She previously had served as president of Guilford College in North Carolina, where she was the first deaf woman to become president of any American college or university. At Antioch, she has led in the creation of the Social Enterprise Plan, which has increased enrollment and revenue at the college. She has increased relationships with alumni. Actually, this evening, she's in New York visiting alumni. And of course, that leads to increased fundraising. And she's known as a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. After her graduation from Trinity, Jane earned master's and doctorate degrees in comparative literature from the University of Iowa. And you've already heard from our third panelist, and you all know her, Joanne Berger-Sweeney, who has led Trinity College since 2014. She's the first woman and first African-American to hold that position. During her decade of leadership, Joanne has established herself as a dynamic leader of the college and in all of American higher education. Widely admired for her strategic thinking, which led to the college's very successful summit plan, Joanne has overseen a strengthening of academic quality and diversity of the student body and the faculty, a renewed commitment to the city of Hartford, and significantly improved financial success, which has led to a doubling of the college's endowment during her tenure. She is currently leading the college's most ambitious and successful fundraising effort, the All In campaign. After earning her undergraduate degree from Wellesley College, Joanne earned a master's in public health degree from the University of California, Berkeley, and a doctorate in neurotoxicology from Johns Hopkins University. So now you've met our panelists, and it's now time for questions and for them to earn their keep on this panel. The first question, and given the title of this seminar, you won't be surprised at it. Given the 2023 Supreme Court decision that ended affirmative action in college admissions process, formerly known as Students for Fair Admission versus President and Fellows of Harvard University, how do you envision the future landscape of diversity in higher education evolving? And what steps do you believe institutions should take to ensure inclusivity and equity in the wake of this decision? And I'll start, Joanne, by asking you that question.
Okay, so the first thing I want to remind people of, and I will try and answer this quickly and let my fellow panelists respond, but diversity is a value in higher education. I think if we asked people, do you think you would have a more stimulating classroom if you had people from California, Texas, Minnesota, North Carolina, and Connecticut, or if everybody was from the same town in Connecticut? everybody would say, I'm sure we would have richer discussions if it was a more diverse group of people. And I think when we talk about the value of diversity in higher education, it's because of the value that that diversity brings to classroom discussions. When people have different ideas, when people come from different places, when people come from different socioeconomic levels, they are perceiving the same question a little bit differently. And we all learn and are enriched from that. And so the Supreme Court decision did not change the value of diversity in higher education. What it said was you cannot use race as the determining factor or as a factor in admissions. And I think all of us heard that loud and clear in higher education. We removed race and ethnicity from any knowledge of that when people apply. However, when the Supreme Court made the decision, they left an opening and they said, if someone wants to describe in their application that their race or ethnicity was part of an important characteristic in shaping who they are and who they are bringing to the college admissions process, then it is admissible. So I think all of us have looked at our admissions processes, made changes to eliminate identification of race and ethnicity. However, we recognize that if an applicant wants to talk about it, that we can look at that in terms of a holistic review of their application. Now, that being said, the question that you asked, Walt, was about inclusion. And I think we understand as educators that people thrive in an academic institution when they feel welcome. So it is our responsibility to make sure that the students who come to Trinity College, from wherever they come, whoever they are, that they feel welcome on our campus and that we are vested in them coming here and thriving, because that's the academic environment in which we think they can best learn, and our entire community can take advantage and learn from the students who come. So I'll stop there.
Jane, would you like to add to Joanne's comments?
Well, I think Joanne has given a very fine response, and I would affirm with Joanne that we have many ways that students are diverse. And probably if we are admitting first-time students, first-generation students, or we're admitting students from low family income, we do know the family's income from the admissions process or the financial aid process. That probably will lead to a lot of diversity. But for me, I think that it's an opportunity to change how we approach inclusion at our colleges, because I think that we might want to start all together by including and valuing emotions that the students bring to college, and that we might want to change some of the way we teach classes to recognize and appreciate the emotions students have. We help students understand who they are, solidly understand who they are, and we help students enter the college community with other students who understand who they are. And then the students become able to apply who they are to the academic departments and programs, majors and courses that we're teaching. Without that connection, I think a lot of our learning becomes rote. And students copy something, they hand it in, or they think of something, write it down, more to get it done than to actually understand more about themselves. So I'm thinking about changing some of the ways that we teach and learn that will, any student from a minority group will understand in class. They'll be sitting wondering, does this book or does this topic apply to me? How does it apply to me? And right now, maybe some of them don't know how it applies, but they know we're teaching it and they have to learn. We can create a way that allows them to be included in what is knowledge, because they will actually understand what they're doing. So I think it's very sad that this Supreme Court changed the use of race in admissions, but we knew it was coming for a long time. And I think it does give us an opportunity to be more serious about how faculty and staff work with students about inclusion.
Excellent point. I would think any of us who went to Trinity would recall that much of what we learned was about ourselves while we were there. Great point. Mike, any comments on this?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. And you're assuming I made it to all my classes while I was at Trinity with that chat room suggestion, but I did the best I could for a 19-year-old. But great to be here. Great to be here with everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. Before I answer the question, I just want to add one other note, because there's so many alums here participating and watching. Dr. Berger-Sweeney, we all owe you a debt of gratitude, really, for your remarkable leadership of the college. You're having just an incredible tenure as president, and we're all really proud of our alma mater. So thank you for what you're doing. And you may not recall, but you were a mentor to me when I first became a president, and I always appreciated that. So thank you. And of course, about 2 weeks after that call, we had a pandemic, so it all kind of went out the window. But I do really appreciate your time back then. To your question, Walt, when we think about access and opportunity and equity, I think we really have to consider the full gamut of schools that are out there. There's nearly 4,000 colleges and universities in our country. So the SCOTUS decision really affected all of us very differently. Certainly for highly selective schools, as was discussed already, it made things much harder in terms of creating opportunities, but harder certainly doesn't mean impossible. We have to be more intentional. We have to be creative. We have to be more committed than ever to really create a diverse learning environment on our campuses. But what I think is fun about the schools that are represented today and in those 4,000 schools out there is that we're all very different, but we're all very special in our own right. And Barry University, just for some context, we are basically, I would call us an access-based institution. We welcome students from 100 different countries and territories. 83% of our students identify as students of color, and a heavy majority of those students are the first in their families to go to college. My favorite statistic about our students is that at graduation, the average graduate brings 11 guests. And sometimes I'm not sure if I have 11 friends. They bring 11 guests. And that just shows how impactful that accomplishment of making it to graduation can be for those students and for their families. So for us at Barry and schools that are like us, the challenge isn't necessarily one of starting point access, although that's always important, but it becomes one more of persistence, of retention, of making it all the way to graduation and finding success once you're enrolled. The average graduation rate for schools like us is typically sub 50%. And to me, that constitutes a real crisis for our students, for our families, and for higher education. So if we're serious about creating genuine opportunity, genuine access that matters, and if we believe, like I think we all do, that education can and should be the great equalizer, then we have to address our outcomes. And we'll get to some of this later with the other questions, but just two points to mention right now. One critical one is affordability. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but we have to make college affordable so that our students can persist. The other, and this is where we really invest our time and energy and resources at Berry, is in creating a true network of support, especially with all the skill deficiencies we're seeing now with students coming out of high school with those pandemic years. We really need to allow traditionally underprepared students to have every resource at their disposal so that they can find success while they're here with us, so that they can get great jobs when they graduate. And this is where we're investing our time and energy here at the university. And I think we all need to do a little bit more of that.
Thanks to all three of you. Let me follow up by asking this question. It's a little bit, plays a little bit off of what Jane had mentioned. How have your colleges or university established initiatives or programs aimed at fostering understanding and empathy among students from different backgrounds? I'll start, Mike, since you mentioned it, I'll start with you.
Sure, great question, and I think we've certainly all really been tested in this space, perhaps more than any time in our careers in the last few months and years. I think that the recent world events and the violence has just really pushed us to change our thinking a little bit on how we manage this. And for college presidents, certainly the written word, which we always rely on so much, has proven to be exceptionally difficult to get this right. And it's all just so massively complex. We want to be, on the one hand, caring, compassionate. We want to be empathetic to every member of our community, to our local communities. And then at the same time, we don't want to upset anyone at any time. So not surprisingly, this all went about as well as would have been expected on our campuses, I think, for many college presidents. And we've really seen this play out in some troubling ways on the national stage. And I'll just share a story. You know, I had a trustee who came to me who was really frustrated in a fair way with my response to the Israeli-Gaza conflict and the statements that we put out. And his statement to me was that, how are the politicians getting this so right, and the college presidents are getting this so wrong? And as an academic, you never want to hear that, right? But he was very genuine in his comment, and I thought about it. I didn't have a good answer for him at the time, but as I thought about it, I realized that politicians, while not always, by and large, they do a calculus, right? They do a calculus, and they say, where's the majority of the opinion sit with my constituents? And then they build an opinion around that. College presidents, we don't have that luxury. We have an obligation. We have an obligation to protect and to support every member of our community, and protect their position, to protect their dignity, to protect their rights. And that's infinitely more complicated than just taking a side of an issue. So at Berry, we really try to tap into our diversity, as Jane said earlier. We have so many unique viewpoints, and we create what we call a deliberative dialogue series. It's not that complicated, but the key is just to get people talking, to not try and write to one another, to not try and assume what people are thinking, but to get people in a room with different views and discussing these issues. And we found that once you have this as a starting point, the folks will not always agree. In fact, they often disagree, but the participants almost always leave feeling better than when they started. And that's really important. I think that's a big success to some degree.
Thanks. Jane, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I can share an experience I have with something that Mike just shared. We have difficult dialogues, but we had difficult dialogues also related to Israel and Palestine. And it became heated. But I think I'm going to say that we're trying to help people hear all sides, not just hear, but understand. And that's what I'm talking about in the first answer. It's let people know who they are and let people show us who they are. And I am me and you are you, and we're all in a community together. So we stay in community, even if we agree or disagree. That has had some positive outcomes on students. But I think I'll share briefly one other conversation that I observed related to undocumented and DACA students and citizens, because in our school we have some undocumented students, DACA students, and then we have citizens, U.S. citizens. So I observed one dialogue where the person who was a citizen said, you don't belong here. To the undocumented, and you don't belong here. You came here when you were 6 with your father, and you're taking up all these things. Who are you? Why don't you just go back? And so the undocumented student said, well, my family could think about that. Some of us are thinking about leaving, but I want to ask you, your people came to the U.S. and you didn't live here. You moved to the U.S. and you took it over, but Native people lived here before you. So who should be leaving? Okay, so this was an amazing conversation. It went on for a long time, and they didn't agree, but they weren't arguing. They were talking. This is my experience. This is your experience. And that helps to make a community strong, a good academic community. So dialogues and helping people have dialogues is an important thing for us to do.
Great example.
Right.
Joanne?
I'm not sure I can add much more to the very rich answers that were provided by my colleagues. But I just want to underscore that to create empathy, people have to start by listening to each other. And that is a skill that we seem to have lost with quick clips and social media and actually sitting and listening to someone else's argument is the first thing that you have to be empathetic. And the one thing I will kind of add to the conversation is that recently here at Trinity, our Dean of the Faculty, Sonia Cardenas, sent out a note to faculty members about teaching in a divided world. How do you create the space in the classroom for more than one side to be heard and to listen to each other? And so I want to say, whether we are always perfect as teachers or not, we do need to be modeling how to do this ourselves, because the students are watching and learning from us. And I say, as teachers, as administrators, as staff, as coaches, we all have to model, because our students are watching more than we think. And that is at least one place where I think it should start.
Good idea. Well put. Move on to the next question, which Mike referred to earlier. Given the rising cost of higher education, which is clearly on the minds of a lot of parents and families these days, how can institutions allocate resources to enhance student success, both academically and personally, and at the same time manage the costs that are driving the increase in tuition? So I'll start with Jane on this one.
Well, all the colleges where I've worked have had serious financial challenges. But I mean serious, it's serious. So sometimes month to month, we're figuring out how to get through. I think we're a little bit of a different budget case than many colleges who have challenges, but we are, I'd say, dire challenges. So all I can say is what I have done, we have done. We tried to take assets that our college already has and make them more valuable learning tools for a greater number of people. So we call them something like a learning hub. And we have a farm, so we turned the farm into a hub. People in the village and the state can come to the farm and learn. The same as the students can go to the farm and learn. It's really an experience, have a learning experience. We are designing experiences with the assets we have that people are willing to help us pay for. And that is one way that we can invest in student success. It's a limited purpose. We have about 9 hubs, and we have drawn adults. We've drawn many people from Ohio, whereas we never had anything like that before. I'm trying to use the assets I have for a greater good for the college. And it's somewhat successful, but we're not rich yet, not yet.
It's too bad Trinity doesn't have a farm, Joanne.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'll ask you the same question, Joanne. How do we increase student success without adding to costs?
Right. So this is a very complicated question. And as Jane was answering, I was trying to decide how am I going to address this? So there's one thing I will start with, and then I think a second thing that I will follow up with. The first thing that I want to say is that since I arrived at Trinity, which was in 2014, our board of trustees pushed us to really make sure that we were providing a value to students that they could see outcome measures and data that underscored what we were doing for them in college. So when I first started, we did not, and most of our peers did not, 6 months after students graduate, ask them what they were doing, whether they were employed in a job of choice, or whether they were in graduate school, military fellowships. So the first thing we did was started measuring outcome metrics so that when people asked us the question, we could come back and say to our students, to our families, and to our community that 6 months after graduation, 97+% of our students have jobs of choice, in graduate schools of choice, or fellowships of choice. So that's a pretty great demonstrated value. It means that if you come to Trinity College, your likelihood of immediately after graduating, 6 months after, you are employed in graduate school or have a fellowship. So we decided that it was good that we were providing, a wonderful liberal arts education, but given the environment, we also had to make sure that people understood that we were putting some of our resources into, whether you want to call it career development, kind of outreach, but I call it how people transition as they graduate from Trinity College. So we absolutely put resources there. We absolutely started measuring what we were doing so that we could articulate that value to our community and to incoming students. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside and said we were able to do that and keep our operating cost below the rate of inflation. But we also, yes, at that time did raise tuition, did increase our salaries, which is where the majority of our money goes to two primary areas: financial aid and scholarship, and paying our employees. And I bet everyone who is on this call can think about a faculty member, a staff member, a coach who made a difference because of the kind of personalized attention that they could give to you. Fewer people means fewer interactions like that will happen. So it's not that we're taking our money, burning it. It is not going to climbing walls at Trinity College, I can promise you. But it is going into the people who provide the education. The last statement I want to make, because I feel so strongly about education and the cost and the price. My husband, as many of you know, he was born and raised in Switzerland, Basel, Switzerland. If you look at the cost that the University of Basel spends per student, and the University of Connecticut, UConn, spends per student, the prices will be very, very similar. But in the two different countries, education is subsidized and supported differently, such that one ends up being free to the individual in Basel who goes to the university, and one, UConn, the state government pays 20% of their overall budget. So it's not that we are so inefficient in delivering our education. It is how it is paid for in different societies. And we really need to think seriously about how education is paid for in the United States, because it's so valuable to the individual and to society.
Thanks, Mike. You brought this up, so.
Those are both really, really excellent answers. I think just take a different angle on this from some schools in our tier. I think there's some real misperceptions around higher ed and the cost, and specifically around what's occurred in the last few decades or so. And it's understandable, right? We all see the sticker prices just skyrocketing. If you have kids in college, it's 3%, 5%, 7%. And as Joanne noted, it's necessary. It costs more to run our institutions. But what's a little bit more behind the curtain is that discount rates, not all and not everywhere, but the discount that we offer on that tuition has increased from generally around like 30% 15, 20 years ago, maybe less, to now a national average of 50, 60, even 70% at some places. So when you hear people talk about sort of the crisis in higher education, when you read in the paper about medium, smallish private schools closing or having to merge, this is what happened. And in all honesty, you could argue that it should have happened, right? College is too expensive. And the trend that I just described is ultimately a good thing. It's making school cheaper, the net cost of school cheaper and more accessible for students, but it has made it infinitely more difficult on the colleges and the universities because expenses don't stop going up, and we're getting less net tuition from students. And I give the universities a lot of credit for adjusting our business models in really significant ways. You'd be hard pressed to find some schools in our bracket, if you will, that are not significantly smaller than they were 10 years ago, but we're still providing the same exceptional education for our students. So we're proud of that. The main point of higher ed still costing too much is there, though. So how do we address that? I think there's two things that we've tried to do. One is to really leverage philanthropy, as Joanne mentioned, through scholarships, right? Creating opportunities, creating access through scholarships. And we've always done that, and we've always done that in higher ed. Another is a bit more modern, and that is building creative partnerships within industries that have critical workforce demand issues, right? Industries that need college graduates to come work for them. And I'll use one example of nursing and healthcare in general, right? We have a massive crisis in the shortage of nurses in our country. South Florida, as you can imagine, is really feeling that in difficult ways. We've been able to create some partnerships with the major hospital systems where they provide full scholarships to our students. They allow our students to train and teach them at their hospitals and their clinical rotations. And then the students are obligated to go work there for several years after college. It's an absolute winning formula for everybody involved. The students, in essence, get a free education with a great value to it. They have a wonderful job waiting for them when they get out, and they have this exceptional training ground while they're students. And we've been pushing ourselves to think about how can this model be replicated in other industries where there's great demand, there's great student interest, to make college more affordable for students through those types of scholarships. So it's worked well on the healthcare side, and we think it can work well in other fields.
You might want to define what discount rate means, Mike. Sure,
no, happy to. So it's pretty simple in the sense that if the tuition is $30,000 and you have a 50% discount rate, the out-of-pocket cost for the students is $15,000. And what you've seen is that discount, the amount that we discount on tuition, move from somewhere in the 30s. So that $30,000 would have been, the out-of-pocket would have been, I don't need to do the quick math, but somewhere in the 20s, up to 50, 60, 70% of a discount. Now the students are paying in the teens. I mean, I'll give you an example at Barry. Our tuition is $30,000, not counting room and board. The average student pays somewhere between $11,000 and $14,000, right? So sticker price is really irrelevant, and nearly 100% of our students get some form of financial aid. So for any parents out there who are listening, the figure that you need to care about is not the sticker price, and it's the net price. And sometimes the net price is the sticker price for certain families, but by and large, there are discounts and scholarships to be had that can make college much more affordable.
Thanks. Yeah, we all of us in higher ed kind of know what the term is, but I thought it would be good.
No, good clarification.
Let me move on to a different topic. It's quite prevalent now in the press and elsewhere that there's a declining interest in the liberal arts and an increasing interest in majors or other programs that lead to career opportunities. All four of us on the screen are graduates of liberal arts colleges. And I assume that we all believe we benefited from our education. Three of us from Trinity and one from Wellesley. How can universities and colleges today continue to support the liberal arts and also prepare students for successful careers, which is what both students and their parents seem to want these days? So I'll start with you, Joanne.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is remove the false dichotomy that you're either doing a liberal arts education or you're preparing students for the future. Clearly, those two are absolutely merged. I loved the conversations that I had with a business leader. His name was Ravi Kumar, used to be with Infosys and now with Cognizant. And he said to me, what we need most in our employees is their ability to learn. We can teach them the skill sets they need for technology, but they need to know how to learn. They need to understand motivation. And that, he kept saying, is what they seem to be getting in a liberal arts education. So if employers understand that, I don't know why everybody doesn't understand that it isn't just the subject matter you're learning in the liberal arts. You're learning how to learn. And I keep saying you're learning how to learn, not what to learn. And as a liberal arts graduate, you have to take courses in many different subject areas. And one of the most exciting things, I think, as a liberal arts student is you start connecting these things almost that had never necessarily been connected before, which, if you ask me, is the basis of creativity, entrepreneurship. All of those things, I think, are stimulated with a liberal arts education, connecting things in different ways, learning how to analyze, ask deep questions that maybe haven't been asked before. Who wouldn't want this kind of education? And it is not inconsistent with preparing students with tools they will need after they graduate to get their first, second, and third jobs. So, as I mentioned to you, we have a liberal arts degree, and we have 97 plus, 98%, I think, last year of our students who within 6 months have jobs, graduate school, or fellowships. So it's very, very possible. And it's not just the first job, it's learning how to learn for every job that you will have afterwards, whether it's volunteer, whether it's for pay, throughout your life. So that's how I'll start.
Okay. Jane, what would you like to add to that?
I would say that at the college I'm working at now, Antioch College, we have made academic learning, co-curricular learning, and work. We believe that the three are inseparable. So we're not teaching someone how to get a job or get a job, but we're teaching necessary skills that everyone needs to be good citizens. So one term each year, we have an office that places students in various positions of work in the country and internationally. So every student 4 times during their 4 years for one term has a job. They get paid. They have a supervisor, but it's part of their degree. Their liberal arts degree includes what is this work all about and how does it relate to what I do here in college. So we have the same very successful rate of placement. As Joanne mentioned, the students get jobs, they go to graduate school, and then they get jobs, or they're doing things that are vitally important for their communities and the world because they're already done in college 4 times. But one great thing is that the students leave they have a resume with 4 jobs, but only one term. It's not all year, but they have 4 jobs they worked at they have supervisors who will give them references. And they learned what they like and what they don't like. They thought they wanted to be a doctor, but after their first co-op position, they decided, no way, they're going to do something else. And they're so grateful for that. So it's about life. It's about a productive life and a good citizenship, more so than getting a job. And it is liberal arts all over the place. Anyway, it's liberal arts. That's what we do.
Great. Mike?
Such an important question, and I'm laughing to myself a little bit. I banned using the references to the pandemic and with our leadership team, but I'm going to mention it twice in our conversation here. But just kind of a unique angle on this with so many liberal arts graduates here on the call and all of us. You know, whatever profession you're in, right, and certainly for those of us in higher education, maneuvering through the pandemic, I was reminded almost every day of how it put my liberal arts education and skills on full display. I mean, literally, whatever you do for a living, I imagine you felt something similar. It was like this 2.5-year exercise in critical thinking, problem solving, empathy, creativity, whatever it took to get to the other side. And I think we all remember making these really critical decisions, and that impacted massively the welfare of people who we were responsible for in our community with just nothing more than like a CNN news report or Dr. Fauci. And I just honestly, I say this as a credit to Trinity and the Trinity education, just felt really well served by the liberal arts background during those moments. It was very helpful. I would argue as well that these same skills are now needed more than ever in higher education. And especially when you think about where things are going with technology and where things are going with artificial intelligence, really across every field, every academic discipline, you are going to see, as we all know, in the next few years, radical change in how we teach, what's expected of our graduates. And as much as we're all training our next generation of these technology experts, we're also training ethicists and political scientists and sociologists and economists to shape how this technology is used and in the most extraordinary and productive ways to advance us, but also with the guardrails and the oversight to be socially and morally responsible. And this is what the liberal arts will do for us and why it's so important. It's a huge undertaking, and it will truly require the best thinkers among us, and these liberal arts educations will certainly be as important as ever.
Great. Thank you.
You've all mentioned initiatives that are innovative ways to supplement liberal arts or expand the liberal arts to prepare students. I'm wondering if there anything specific to your college that you've already named some, but I want to give you a chance to talk about anything else that you think might be helpful in thinking about the way we prepare students for the world out after the liberal arts.
I really liked the way that, Jane put it. It's reminding us that when students have the ability to experience learning, most of us think of experiential learning, not sometimes you can do it in the classroom, often outside of the classroom. But when you have the ability to have internships, you find out both what you like and what you don't like. And sometimes we forget that both of those are important. And what I love to share with students about Trinity College, the fact that we are in a city means that our students can engage in internships during the semester. They don't have to wait till the summer where they can go to New York City and find an internship there. So I think we are all learning from the liberal arts model that integrating internships, practical experience along with the book learning is really what's ideal. And I think, and from what I've heard, all of us are doing that very successfully, whether our students would go and do an internship at Aetna or at a nonprofit, you know, right around the corner here in Trinity. Getting them off campus, getting them integrated into what everyone is referring to the real world. It sounds like we are all doing that really well and servicing our students very well.
So I guess you're saying that Aetna is Trinity's version of Antioch's farm?
And, you know, and maybe it's because I now sit on an NCAA committee, which I know, Walt, you were very involved in. I also don't want to forget just how much our students are learning on the sports fields, on the courts, the teamwork they're learning, you know, an ability to win and to lose. I think there's just so much we offer in creating a whole person that we should all be really proud.
Mike, you want to add to that? I know you had a career in athletics at one point.
Sure. That was too long ago to even reference. But I pull something just talking about it. But I will go to your question about innovation. Innovation, though, I think that's such an important one. And you know, universities are notorious like for moving like ocean liners, right? And industries moving like speedboats. And I think that's the gap that we have to close. And the key to this is really partnering with industry leaders in ways that we haven't fully embraced in the past. And I'll go back to the technology example just really quickly. Students who start with us today will be graduating 4 years from now. What on earth will AI, cybersecurity, data analytics, what will those things look like in 4 years? And the answer is we have no idea. And it's all moving so fast. And the way that we can get ahead of this, or at least stay up with it, is these partnerships. And by really opening ourselves up as universities to listening to learning from, to partnering with industry leaders in ways that we haven't always been flexible enough to do in the past, that's how we produce graduates who can really hit the ground running and really make a difference. At the same time, industry leaders have to trust us. They have to trust us, almost like an annex to their companies as a training ground to produce folks who can really benefit them once they graduate.
Thanks. Well, we're bumping up on the 8 o'clock hour here on the East Coast. So I want to say thank you to our panelists. It's really a pleasure to be with all three of you, to be included in this. I want to thank all of you who have listened in. I saw one question about decline in Jewish students. I could talk about that forever. I also am the co-chair of the advisory board at Trinity Hillel. So if that person would like to get in touch with Bonnie Walters, who organized this, I'd be happy to give you a very full answer. And we're limited on time now. So thanks to Jane, to Joanne, to Mike, and to you all. And all of us are especially grateful for our liberal arts education at Trinity College. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Walt.
Thanks, Walt. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.
Bye.